start our May 9th, 2023 council meeting this evening. Hearing from Councilmember Swanson. He'll give us the invocation or thought and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a short thought that came from my favorite television show of all places. Episode a couple of weeks ago, one of the main characters said something that struck pretty deep into my heart. As something that I think I need to practice more, and I think in today's politics and government world would go a long way. And that phrase is find out before you flip out. You saw that one. It's a great show. And that was a great episode. And I thought, aha, I need to write that one down. So that's my thought for the night. Find out before you flip out, because I'm going to try to do that. Will you stand and join me for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Councilmember Swanson. Before I forget, Councilmember Barker will be joining us a little bit later. He's involved in a part board meeting. Let's be there by 6:30. And hopefully Blake will join us on Zoom. John says he's with us. He's home dealing with an issue and may at times have to be excused. But Blake, if you just let us know when you're not with us anymore, that would be good. So with that, we'll hear from our esteemed County Clerk and Auditor, Mr. Ricky Hatch. It's going to take about 10 minutes and do the presentation to us.
Thank you so much, Mayor, especially for the esteemed part. Don't hear that often. There are other adjectives that probably can't be repeated here. But we are going to, first off, thank you for your service and for our partnership. And what I would like to do today is just go over some key controls that multiple layers of controls that are in the elections process so that you're aware, because you're North Ogden, as well as all the other cities and towns and special districts in Weaver County, has contracted with Weaver County to conduct your elections. You certainly don't have to, and we realize that. We don't make money off of this, but it keeps us sharp for the craziness that will be 2024. So this presentation is to hopefully go over some of the key controls that we have in place, and feel free, please, at any time to ask questions. We're going to talk about the four kind of pillars in my mind of elections integrity in Utah and really anywhere, but we'll go over each of these in detail. The first three, you'll see this over and over and over again. We conduct audits throughout the entire process on each of these, each of the first three pillars, and we'll talk about the last one as well. First one I want to talk about is the importance of the voter records. The voter registration database is crucial, particularly in a state where you mail ballots out to every active registered voter. It's important to note that we have a segregation of duties, and that is between the county clerks and the lieutenant governor's office. The lieutenant governor's office provides oversight. They provide the framework for the voter registration system. They ensure that the security is adequate, but they also oversee the data entry, which is done not by them. They don't update or alter any of the voter records. That's done exclusively by the county clerks. But they oversee and they actually audit now continually throughout the year. Lieutenant Governor's office audits the voter registration database. Every county gets audited at least once a year and often more, just to verify that the proper documentation is in place to justify the status of that particular voter. So the clerks enter and manage the data. Lieutenant Governor's office oversees and audits. As far as voter verification, before we send a single ballot to a voter, they are required to provide to us their Utah driver's license or a state ID, or the last four of their social security number. Now, we verify that with the driver's license division or with the Social Security Administration. If we cannot verify and validate based off of multiple fields of that voter record, we register them. They are required to provide that information before we will send them any ballot whatsoever. We'll contact the voter and say, we don't have all the information, so please send us some additional information. And we also keep up to 5 signatures on file for every voter. We collect those through various ways. It's usually just the driver's license division. That's the most common, but other prior voter registration forms, if you sign a packet, and sometimes we'll take it off the back of the envelope that you return, so we have a current version. Records, voter list maintenance is crucial as well, and we do a lot of things. We check for duplicate registration within the county. We look for, or within the state, we look for names and dates of birth that are similar or that could be possible duplicates. But we also do it with 28 different states and validate it that way. We check for deceased voters. We receive notices weekly from the State Department of Vital Statistics, as well as the Social Security Administration. We also check the obituaries, and we go beyond that because obituaries can be expensive. We actually go to the websites of the funeral homes that are close by and check for those as well to keep our list updated. We receive automatic updates from the driver's license division. This is a great way to help ensure that the list stays current, that the addresses. When people move, you generally don't think to change your voter registration address. And now we can do that when folks change their driver's license address. We also participate in the national change of address, or take advantage of that at least twice a year. Now we're required to do that by law. But we do that twice a year. That's where we work with the post office and we can get identification of people who have moved. And then we can send them notifications to make sure that their voter registration, their ballot gets to the right place. And then lastly, vote by mail itself is a great way to maintain a current list. When we're mailing out to voters twice a year, at least, we get a number of ballots back. You'll see our undeliverable rate. Let's see. Oh, I just did something. There we go. Our undeliverable rate is in 2013, which was when we did our very first vote by mail election in Weaver County. It was the special bond election for the library. Our undeliverable rate, about 20% of all ballots were returned as undeliverable. And it shocked us that it was that bad, that our voter rolls were that incorrect. Well, in 2022, you'll see that rate went down to 1.5%, and that's been consistent for the past several years. So we have a very clean voter roll, and that's important. That's a key control. And of course, this is audited by the Lieutenant Governor's office. Let's talk about ballot envelopes and ballot security. First off, as we are verifying whether a ballot, an envelope that has been returned, whether that was returned properly for this election by the correct voter, that envelope remains sealed. We have no idea how that voter voted. We do that on purpose. We don't want that to influence our decision in any way. On the outside of the envelope, there is no party nor personal information apart from once we remove the tab, the signature cover tab. You can see the voter's signature. Most signatures are not legible, and so that's not so much of an issue, but we want to make sure that it's an independent check when we're verifying that that envelope should be opened and that ballot counted. Our ballot envelopes have multiple layers of security on them, and the one that I'm going to talk about most is this unique control number that is auto-assigned by the state voter registration database. It's auto-generated, and it's specific not just to the voter and not just to that election, but to that specific ballot. And this is a key control. This number is not given out to anybody. It changes every election. In fact, it changes if there's a replacement ballot. And it turns out to be one of the key controls to prevent someone from spoofing an envelope or from asking for another ballot and trying to vote 2 ballots, which I'll talk about in just a second. That unique control number is quite critical. But it happens. Dogs eat our ballots. You'd be surprised at the stories that we get of why people don't have their ballots. Or sometimes you just might not get it. In that case, you can call our office. We'll be happy to give you another ballot. And we have controls in place to help secure that process. We cannot send anybody a second ballot until we have deactivated or spoiled that first ballot. So that control number is no longer valid. The new number is generated again automatically by the system. We have no ability to alter or create that number ourselves. And we simply can't do that until that first number is deactivated. Now let's talk about some of our equipment. This is the envelope sorter that we use. It scans the barcode, which is that control number for that ID, and it verifies that that is in fact a valid, non-spoiled, legitimate temporary voter ID number for this election. And then this machine takes a picture of the voter's signature. And this is crucial for us to do signature verification. We conduct a signature verification review, and it's compared up to the 5 signatures on file that we have. If the signature matches, it's good, and that envelope is set aside to be sliced open and processed. If it's challenged, it goes through a second and a third review by our trained election staff. Now we train our staff in training that's created by forensic signature comparison folks, and we've received training at a state level on that. And now there's a new law just passed this year that further codifies that requires a training to be done by the Lieutenant Governor's office. We've been doing it for years, but it's nice to have that in code. This process is audited. It used to be audited after the election because of legislation this year. We've moved that auditing to be required to being done before those envelopes are opened, because if we were to find a problem with the signature verification, we want to catch it before we start opening ballots and start counting those. We keep statistics on all of our reviewers, and we review those statistics real time as they are processing and reviewing those signatures. And if we see anything, we know approximately what kind of the normal range is of acceptance and rejection. If we see something that gets out of line, we pull them aside and try to identify if there are any training issues that are needed. So the signature verification process is fully audited in public, I might add. If a signature is challenged, that doesn't mean that the ballot is rejected. We won't open it unless the voter cures that ballot. So we notify the voter. We'll either mail or text or email if we have text numbers and email addresses. We provide them with a cure letter and instructions. They'll have to provide some additional information that identifies who they are. They'll have to sign that cure letter, and they have to return it to us. If they do, and the signatures match and the data lines up, then we count their ballot. If they don't, we don't count their ballot. On average, about 1.2% of all envelopes are challenged, and about half of those end up being cured. I wish that number were higher, and we're working on ways to make that higher. But one of the key reasons why I think that's at 50% is because a lot of people wait until right at election day to return their ballot, but we can't process all of the ballots on election day. And so we're processing those. So a voter might get a cure letter 2 or 3 days after election day saying, hey, we want to count your ballot. We need some additional information. They might say, the election's already over. I already know who won. Why should I return it? Well, they don't realize that the election is not over until 2 weeks after election day. And as candidates, you know that that is a painful 2 weeks as you're waiting for those results to be absolutely finalized. So we're guessing that a lot of those are in fact people who just say, well, my vote it's not going to change anything, so I'm not going to go through the hassle. Now let's talk about ballot processing and the chain of custody controls that we have in place. When ballots come in, we group those in batches. We generally do them in batches of 250 ballots. And we have an audit card that is attached to that batch of envelopes. And the audit card has all sorts of information on it, including the beginning control ID for the beginning envelope for that batch and the ending. And we can tell you from that control ID exactly which batch it belongs to. Anytime workers process or handle those ballots, they initial that card. So we know exactly which workers touched which ballots and what processes they performed with those and on what day. So we keep track of all of that. We conduct reconciliations throughout the process. We have specific breaks in the process, and at which point we conduct a reconciliation. And if we are one ballot off, we stop and we go back and research. And that batch does not continue to be processed until that discrepancy has been verified. And now you think about it, we processed last November almost 90,000 ballots. And if there is a single one that is off in any of those reconciliations throughout any of those processes, we stop and research. That's how much we care about the integrity of every single ballot. This is our scanning equipment. This is what scans the actual ballots after they've been removed from the envelopes. This is, the vendor is ES&S. They're based in Omaha, Nebraska. They're the largest election tabulation company in the US. They've been around for decades, a fantastic company. Let's talk about the security measures just before we can even use this equipment. First off, we can only use equipment that has been certified by the US Election Assistance Commission. That is a bipartisan entity that was set up after Bush v. Gore in 2000. And it comes up with standards by which equipment is tested. They work with the with NIST, National Institute of Standards Testing, or Standards and Technology. Can't remember which one it is, but it's a bunch of scientists, and they come up with the best ways to test to make sure the equipment is functioning the way it's supposed to function. That testing certification process takes between 6 and 18 months. Our equipment is never connected to the internet, or is it networked to the county network in any way. There's no modem, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth capabilities on our equipment. All software updates are done manually and in the presence only by a certified vendor, by the certified vendor, and they're done in the presence of our staff under their supervision. And they're also logged and noted, so we know exactly what was done and when and by whom. We put pre-numbered tamper-proof security seals on every possible entry point into the equipment. Those are all logged, and before any of them are taken off or before the equipment is used, they're verified that that equipment has not been tampered with. We also conduct what is called a hash audit before and after the use of the systems. A hash audit is kind of like a digital fingerprint. It's basically where they can go in and they can look at the system's firmware and software, and they take a snapshot of that and create this 62-character hash, which is literally so unique that if you changed the font color, if you added a megabyte of RAM, if you altered one character of the code, that hash would change. We do that right before we begin processing ballots. We do it right before certification at the end, to make sure that that system has not been altered in any way. And of course, that's audited. These systems, we audit these in public meetings, both before and after each election. We do what's called logic and accuracy testing before the election. And that's where we have a preset number of ballots that we know the results to. They don't have anything to do with the election. They're pre-printed, marked by our printer. And we also do a couple of our own just to make sure, just to add a little fun to that. And we test those in a publicly noticed meeting and verify that the system tabulates, it records, converts, and tabulates the ballots as expected without error. And we also do the same thing afterward, but this time we do it with live ballots. We don't rescan them through. We take a randomized sample that's given to us by the Lieutenant Governor's office. And they say, we want you to test these ballots. It's generally between 800 and 1,000 ballots. And we have to pull those and compare them to what the machine says was marked on the ballot. And that's also done in a publicly noticed meeting. The last pillar is voter responsibility. It's crucial to make sure that as voters, we constantly have an updated address. You can do that for free at the driver's license division. You can go online if you move and alter and update your address. You can also do it at vote.utah.gov, but you better do it with the driver's license first, because we verify against the driver's license division information. If you get a ballot for someone that no longer lives at your address, just give us a call. Let us know, hey, these folks moved out, or I don't even know who this is. Let us know and we can fix that. Another great thing that you can do, and it's actually two things. One is you can sign up to track your ballot. We have a free service that if you sign up at ballottracks.utah.gov, you can actually get notified as soon as we print and mail your ballot. You'll get a text or a phone call or an email or all three, and it'll say your ballot has been printed and is on its way. Once you return it back to our office, you'll get another text or email and call that says, we've received your ballot. We're now processing, doing the verification, but it's in our hands now. And then finally, once your signature's been verified, and we've done the other controls and checks, and we slice open your envelope, then we send you a third notification letting you know that your ballot has been counted. This is a great way to stay in control, to maintain control of your ballot. The second thing is another free service, and this is by the Postal Service. It's called Informed Delivery. This is a cool tool that if you sign up, it will send you an email every morning about 7 a.m., 6 a.m. with a listing of what is coming in your mail that day. Not just a listing, but an image of the front of each mail piece. It's a pretty cool little service that it's nice, especially if you're traveling or you're going to be away for a while. It'll tell you exactly what's coming that day. That's called Informed Delivery, and that's free. I already talked about audits, but we audit the heck out of our elections, as we should. Anytime you rely on people or anytime you rely on machines, you should audit them. So we audit before our elections in publicly noticed meetings. We audit during the elections in full view of election observers, and as well after the election, but before certification, again, in a publicly noticed meeting. It's important to get your information from reliable sources. There's a ton of information out there. If you want official information about the elections, go to weberelections.gov, or you can go to vote.utah.gov. Each of those sites have different bits and types of information. At weberelections.gov, you can actually go and watch over an hour's worth of videos if you really want to, that talk about basically what I talked about tonight in 10 minutes, but it goes into much more detail. And there's 12 one-minute videos as well that kind of do a high-level version of what we talked about. It also talks about Dropbox security, how we pick up ballots from the post office and things like that. And that's the end of my presentation. I am grateful to our partnership with Ogden. If you have any questions, certainly you can call me, email me. Lauren Schaefer, who was our elections director, couldn't make it tonight. And she apologizes for that. She has been here for about a year. We hired her. She has experience in the state elections office. She worked for Salt Lake City as a assistant city recorder and helped with their elections. So she has a wealth of experience, and she got a master's degree in cybersecurity. So we have a well-rounded elections director who is at the helm of our office. So thank you very much. I'm open for any questions.
Council, do you have any questions of Mr. Hatch? Very thorough. I would suggest two. I don't know, Rick, if you want to stick around with public comments or maybe some questions. But otherwise, I would encourage anyone who'd like to get further information, call your office. I know you're very responsive, so we appreciate all you do, and thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Open to conduct tours as well, church groups, scout groups, families. We'd love to bring you in and show you how everything works.
Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. All right, with that, we'll move into our consent agenda. Council, you've had a chance to look at this evening's agenda, I assume. Does anyone have a conflict of interest regarding any of the items on the agenda?
I'm just informing, if you would like me to. One of the possible uses for RDA money is for the North Ogden Plaza where I own a business. So I'm just going to let everyone know that if we are deciding about money being spent there, I will recuse myself from voting for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Expo. Anyone else, John? Does Mr. Severing have any conflict?
No conflicts.
No conflict.
No conflict. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 3 on the consent agenda. This is regarding the city council minutes of March 28th, 2023. Assuming you've had a chance to read those minutes. Any corrections?
Just a couple of small corrections.
Councilmember Dallas, go ahead.
On page 14 of the meeting minutes, it states that council member Ekstrom recused herself from the 5-minute recess that was requested. I don't remember her recusing herself from that.
It was
vote,
on
right?
Zoom.
So that is inaccurate. And the other small bit is on page 16 at the bottom during public comments. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down from the number 13. The is misspelled. The is spelled E-T-H-E. Obviously should be T-H-E. That's it.
That's the English spelling, Mr. Dallas.
Yeah, oh, darn it, I should have known.
All right.
It's in
Councilmember Dal passes a couple of corrections. With that, do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Extra. Do we have a
Second.
Second by Councilmember Swanson. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now enter into our active agenda and we'll entertain public comments this evening. If you'd like to make a comment, please step up to the podium. Please state your name, and if you're a resident of North Ogden, please limit your comments to no more than 5 minutes. It's called to save the mayor, if you'll do that, so I don't have to interrupt. So if you do that, John, if you'd watch for comments online.
My name is Reed Miller. I'm a resident of North Ogden. When I became an officer in the United States Army, I took an oath. And that oath was to support and defend the Constitution. Of course, all of our council members have taken a similar oath. And I consider that a very solemn oath that I want to uphold 100% of the time, not only as an officer, but as a citizen as well. Because why? Constitution is the supreme law of the land. All of our laws that are made here, or at the state level, federal level, should be in line with the Constitution. And so I'm happy that, I feel that you follow that Constitution. I hope you always do, because that will secure our freedom. And of course, the role of government is to uphold the people's rights that are found in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. Okay, now, this right here is a trophy. There is 2 students that came from our elementary school right here that were in a Constitution bee. Now, it's like Jeopardy, except you do with teams, with buzzers and all. And these 2 people were on a team with 5, and they competed against 14 other teams from Draper to North Ogden. They studied the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Bill of Rights, the amendments, because all the questions were on there. And they took 2nd place in the competition, which is really quite commendable. They received a silver medal with a lanyard, red, white, blue. They received also $50. That was pretty good. And a certificate. We should be proud of them. In fact, I feel that they know the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence better than probably most of us. And here they are, a 6th grader, Sam Kimball, and a 5th grader, Connor Toole. And so hopefully next year we'll have a little bit even more involvement, because this is a way for us to really come to know all those main documents. Thank you.
Reed, if you could contact Katie Gerard here, I think we'd like to put something in the North Ogden Connection about that. If you could give us some information and names. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Are there any other comments this evening?
Randy Wynn, North Ogden. With Mr. Hatch here, I'd just like to give a thanks to him and his department. A few years ago, I was involved in a very close election here in the city, And it was very comforting to have him take me down there for a half hour and take me through all this process and show me so that I could have confidence that it was an accurate election. And so I've always appreciated him in his office. Thank you.
Randy? Anyone online, John? Anyone else here this evening like to make a comment? I see none. Mr. Hatch, you won't be offended if you'd like to leave, but you're always welcome here anytime. I appreciate what you do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, council, the next item on our agenda this evening is a discussion or action to consider an ordinance which would approve the tentative budget. And let me emphasize tentative. This is a little bit unusual this year. We usually feel like we've got everything nailed down. I think there's three things that I would like to emphasize why this is tentative, and this will be the budget we operate under for a small period of time anyway, I believe, till we approve the final budget. The three things are this. One, we have a citizen committee that we're awaiting comments from and see if they have any suggestions that we could take into consideration. At this point in time, I'm not aware that that has happened. So we may find something there that would require an adjustment. The second thing is, as Councilmember Swanson has indicated in some of his reports recently, is sales tax. For the first time in a number of years, I think, since you said you've been on the council, Councilmember Swanson, we had a decrease in the amount of sales tax collection. We try to make our best estimate on that. From starting the budget to the tentative one, I think that was reduced the projection by about 150,000. We will be receiving additional information here before we have to approve the final budget, which could affect our projection. We hope that's not an issue, but we'll wait and see. Third one is, in the last couple of days, the council was informed that our recorder, who has served faithfully here in the city, along with our friend Joyce, which I'd like to thank for being here tonight. Thank you so much for attending. Her husband has accepted a job out of state. So she will be moving. So we will be searching to fill that position. I don't know exactly how that will be filled. She has been serving, I guess, say part-time. So there is a difference between part-time employees and full-time employees when it comes to budgeting regarding potential benefits. So those are three things that I want the public to be aware of, that the council will be looking at and digesting before we approve the final budget. So tonight, I want to emphasize it's tentative, but it's based upon the best information we have at this time. It's somewhat unusual that we have those three things that could affect our final budget. So with that, I would invite our finance director, Jamie Jones, to discuss anything or answer any questions that you would like, council. What we'd be approving after this presentation, the questions are answered, is ordinance 2023-10. If the council feels so inclined to approve a tentative budget this evening. So with that, Ms. Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to add or say, or?
No, I don't have anything new. I don't know if you want to do another rundown or council has questions. I'm happy to do.
And I could add one other thing that I failed to add on the tentative budget. Council still has to have further discussion on providing funds for future identified water projects that could result in a further adjustment to the water rates as we look at that going forward. Jamie has done a good job of working with our Public Works Department, having them identify issues that we think we'll be facing within the next 5 years. And we want to be prepared for that. So we can add a fourth thing to the list potentially. Okay, council. Jamie has offered her knowledge of the budget. I think she did a great job presenting it last week, but do you have any further questions?
I do.
Okay, Councilmember Extra, let's hear from you.
Big surprise. All right, so if we do not, okay, so this is a timeline question, so this is either you or John. If we don't approve one tonight, what's the process then going forward, and what's the timeline, and when do we have to have it done? And, you know, does that make
So-
sense?
Has to be done tonight.
It has to be done tonight as far as the tentative. The final adoption has to be done by the 22nd of June, unless there is a truth and taxation hearing. And then that is September 1st. Just because if there's a decision to move into a truth and taxation hearing, doesn't mean that property taxes are raised, but we do have to adopt the budget and have it submitted by September 1st.
Okay.
So the first step in the process is to adopt a tentative. Basically, it's as the mayor suggested, is the mayor bringing forward a budget, and then this is to kick off the conversation.
Okay, so this just kicks off the conversation. Okay, because I voiced my
It
my
does,
position last week, so I'm like, I want to talk about that. So,
it does
yeah.
act as an operating budget for the chance that the budget is not adopted, final budget is not adopted in June, and so that in July and August, the city can continue operating.
Okay, all right.
Another comment I do have is I have checked the certified tax rate, and preliminary data is still unavailable. That was as of today.
That's the point, Councilmember Ekstrom. That may be another issue the council has to wrestle with before the final budget, depending on how all the pieces fit together. So that's surely an opportunity is not lost for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Call, you had a comment?
And council, as an example, if the council did want to hold the truth and taxation, you could also adopt a different operating budget. It doesn't have to be today's budget. So the idea is, in theory, you could adopt another tentative budget if you were heading for truth and taxation, so that the operating budget for June and August was different than what's being presented tonight.
Okay,
So.
okay, very good. Okay, that's all. That was it.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Are there any other comments? Councilmember Swanson.
Only to reiterate what you've already said, Mayor. We had a good conversation today. I spoke with Jamie today. I spoke with John today, and this is a unique year, an interesting year, in that we've got some wrinkles being thrown at us at the very last moment. We're looking at sales tax projections that are different than what we've experienced in the past. In the past, it was always how much do we increase it by? This is the first year that I can remember as either an elected member of council or attending council meetings before that, where the discussion is, we've already taken it down and we may have to take it down again, depending on what the data is. Then obviously with the recorder position and the water rates and those things. So just a note to the citizens that we're not done yet. What was presented last week and what's in the budget as of tonight, almost guaranteed won't be what it is on June 12th when we pass the final budget, because we've got so many factors that still have yet to be ironed out.
Any other comments? Councilmember Dalpaz?
Just that I don't believe there have been any major changes since the last time that Jamie presented it, so I feel comfortable with the information.
Is that correct, Ms. Jones? No changes. All right, that's good. So the mayor's job is to recommend the budget, present it to the council. It's their job then to approve it. As I mentioned last week, the mayor is submitting a conservative budget, balanced budget as required by the state of Utah, knowing that it's subject to change with information between now and next period of time. Which I, once again, would reiterate, it's a little bit unusual, but we have so many things that are unsettled at this point in time. But I have full confidence the council will be able to deal with those. There's several options, so options are good. So with that, then, council, I would look for someone to make a motion to approve ordinance 2023-10, which is the fiscal year 2023-24 tentative budget. Do you have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we approve ordinance 2023-10, approving the fiscal year 2023-2024 tentative budget.
I second
To
that.
announce our voting routine this evening.
Here, I second
Sorry,
that.
Councilman Severing has unmuted himself, and because we're getting some feedback, I've had him on mute on our end, so.
Oh, so you're saying he would like to make a comment?
Yes, I apologize. I was watching and then stopped watching, so.
Okay, well, it's open for discussion. We have a motion on the floor, but it's fine for discussion. Councilmember Severing.
I was only commenting to second Councilwoman Charlotte's motion.
Second.
Seconding the motion.
So you'd be a third to the motion, I think, down there, right?
No, Councilman Severing is seconding.
And second. And we will start with Councilmember Swanson. Make our way down to the right, including Councilmember Severing, and come back to you, Councilmember Extra. All right, Councilmember Swanson, your vote, please. Yes, Councilmember Dowpaz,
Yes.
Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Extra.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously on 4-0 vote. Now, council, I'd be looking for an action to recess the city council meeting and convene the redevelopment agency meeting.
On the item that we just had, 5A, and there was a time for public comments. Are we skipping over that?
Only by accident. So now that we do have time for public comments, my error, thank you for pointing that out, Councilmember Swanson.
I just saw it as well.
When North Ogden. I've been asked by the mayor to serve with the subcommittee for the budget in the city and as a liaison. And so I'm not the chairman, so I won't give an official report. But I will report that in the many meetings that we have had, I think our subcommittee has generally been impressed with the various department heads and how they came to their budgets. They will have some ideas maybe to save a dime or two and to improve the budget, but I think our city is well served by the process that's happened and the time that the department heads have put into doing that budget. So I don't know that that was our anticipation when we started, but I think most of us have been impressed with our city departments.
Thank you, Randy. Anyone else? John, is there anyone online?
Seems pointless at this time.
Hey, we're always open. We can.
It's
reopen
still
it.
just tentative.
Well, the vote's already been done. It's kind of pointless at this time, so we'll wait till the next one.
You know, we're fairly open, Mr. Burns.
We
If
like
you'd
to have
make-
ideas to marinate on.
You're welcome, because we could be considering that before the
It's okay,
final budget.
it's okay.
So just rebel rousing tonight. All right. My mistake on that. All right. Well, I thank you for that, Randy, and I think that, sometimes the
the budget has been more, I guess, I don't know what to call it, where meetings were held for days on end and nothing really resulted from it. I think we've taken a different approach, which I think is very involved by the council members, by citizens, and particularly Jamie. She and John need medals for having to put up with the mayor and all these questions and things of that nature. All right. Now, I'd be looking for a motion to recess the city council meeting and convene the redevelopment agency so we can look at their budget.
So moved.
Have a motion to adjourn council meeting for the RDA. Have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpat. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor of recessing the city council meeting and convening the RDA meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so now we're going to move on to item number 6 on our agenda. This is also from Ms. Jones. She's going to talk to us, ask if we have any questions regarding an ordinance to approve the RDA fiscal year 2023-24 tentative. Jamie?
Mayor, so both, or Chairman. So both the REA and the CEA are very uneventful as well. Holding the revenues constant from last year. So no projects are budgeted at this time in either of the funds. But there is a $175,000 transfer from the RDA to the Aquatic Center to help with operating costs. And then just to note that even though the projects are not budgeted, that we are preparing for a fall retreat to discuss how to program the RDA funds. That's really all that I have.
Thank you, Jamie. Council, do you have any questions for Jamie? As you know, I'm very concerned about the amount of money that's transferred to the Aquatic Center. That can't go on forever. Once the RDA is settled up, if that is not reduced to a break even, that comes out of the general fund of the city. And right now, as you know, there's no revenues in the general fund that would cover that amount currently. Mr. Collins informed me that that's kind of a placeholder, so to speak, that it's not anticipated that amount would be fully utilized. I think last year was like 35,000, 33,000. And I know they're doing things to generate additional revenues. So once again, council, I think members of the committee, of the RDA, that's something that should be further addressed in regards to how revenues can be properly adjusted to minimize the contribution from the RDA. All right, any questions for Jamie? I see none, unless you see Mr. Severing having some questions, Mr. Call?
Nope.
He sees none. So I would be looking then, okay, I'd be looking for Mr. Burns to make some comments. Time, him or anyone else. It's been a tough day. Yes.
Okay, Mayor, Kevin Burns, I'm North Ogden resident. I didn't really have anything to say. I was just really happy that we got pointed out there was public comment section. So, but in this particular case, this RDA, we've had this discussion a few times about the RDA is closing and we've got to do something with the Aquatic Center. And this is one of those that feels like it just continually is kicked down the road as trying to develop a real plan on what to do with that. And it would be really nice to just put a bow on that and get that one done and have a solid plan. This really feels like when we keep kicking down the road. So That's just my 2 cents from the cheap seats over here.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Just so, we have made little progress. We did pay the debt off. At one point in time, we were funding that debt too. Now it's been paid off. We have gone from, like I say, last year was like 35,000, but we have a ways to go. And I think in regards to your comment also, we need to, Justin is working on that. We need to know what the renovations are going to be necessary for that facility. So before the final budget is approved, that's something else council may want to look at. But a good point, Mr. Burns, thank you. Anyone else, Mr. Call?
Not online, no.
Anyone else here? Reed? State your name.
Reed Miller, North Ogden. I just want to emphasize that we have to provide for our needs and balance budget. Some subject is really, really tender with, I know residents and all, is further taxation. So keep that in mind because it's the taxation or the fees or things. I'm sure that's on your mind. But once again, if there's any way to avoid that, I'm sure you'll do that. But it's something that's on residents' mind. We don't want to be taxed bad, is what I'm getting at. Thank you.
John and myself were discussing the other day what a unique last 3 years it's been. 2 months after I was elected mayor, we got into a pandemic. And we got out of that and got into the highest inflation period in the last 40-something years. So the council's earning their fees. That massive $500 a month they get, they're on top of it. So thank you for your comments. Anything else? Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom, for pointing that out. One air is good, two's not so good. So, all right. With that, and no further public comments, I would be looking for a member of the RDA motion to approve the ordinance. Yes, it's ordinance RDA 2023-11, I believe. Is that correct, Joyce?
Yes.
All right. So that would be the RDA ordinance 2023-11, that will be approving the tentative fiscal year 2023 tentative budget. We have a motion to that effect.
Mayor, I'll move that we approve ordinance RDA 2023-11, approving the tentative RDA fiscal year 2023-24 budget.
Thank you, Member Swanson. Do we have a second to that?
Second.
Thank you, Member Ekstrom. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing none, then we'll proceed with our voting. Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpass.
Yes.
Councilmember Severin,
Yes.
So, sorry, I had it muted.
Yes.
Councilmember Severin, are you with us?
Yes.
You may have had to go take care of an issue. So we'll go to you, Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously on 3-0 vote. So with that, I'd be looking for an action to adjourn the RDA meeting and convene the regular city council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Ekstrom and seconded by Councilmember Swanson. Any discussion on that motion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 I
Did we have Councilmember Severin vote on that one?
tried.
He did, yes.
Try. Was that a yes? Or
That is a yes.
motion passes on a 4-0 vote. We're now reconvening our city council meeting. We're on item number 7 on our agenda. This will be presented by Mr. Scott Hess, who's our Community and Economic Development Director. And he's going to discuss a rezone of several city-owned properties to the civic zone.
All right,
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this is a rezone of two different city-owned facilities. It's made up of multiple parcels. Planning Commission heard this item on April 19th, 2023. I won't read all of the parcel numbers off, but John, in the item, there's a map of the two different areas. Generally, the two areas are Lomond View Park and an area at the end of 2750 North and Mountain Road that includes the equestrian park and the current trailhead for Coldwater Creek and the canyon trails there. Planning Commission also reviewed at the same time as this rezone or concurrently with it, two different site plan applications. So a site plan to install pickleball courts at Lomond View City Park and a trailhead improvement over at 2750 Mountain Road that includes equestrian parking, asphalt trailhead and restrooms. The site plans were approved unanimously. It's an administrative item. The council won't see those, but pending the rezone to civic zone. So the city implemented the civic zone a handful of years ago, and we've slowly been picking up the pieces as we go along, mostly when there's been an improvement. So we could do a mass rezone. It's possible to do that. The noticing on those are difficult. So what we do is if we're going to improve park, we just take that opportunity to bring it up to the civic zone at that time. So you'll likely see these kind of trickle through, or we may catch all of the rest of the city parks up at some point. The intention of the city zone or the civic zone is for all manner of civic uses. So we've rezoned this campus here that we're on as the civic zone at the time that the subdivision to the west of us was done and completed, and that was turned into commercial for Nielsen's Frozen Custard. And it allows us to address parking standards to be consistent, landscaping standards, ADA standards, when you might need restrooms and other things like that. So it gives us a zone to play by the rules and operate the same way we would have any other applicant do it, but also just gives us a specific zone that is city zoned or civic zoned as opposed to Lomond View Park right now being split zoned between R18 agriculture and R110. So it's better to have those addressed all as one civic use zone. I want to point out by the equestrian park that the city owns another 6 acres to the south of that. So the remaining R1 12.5 zoned area is almost entirely city owned, with the exception of a Rocky Mountain Power substation right there, which they weren't party to this application, so they didn't get rezoned to civic zone. But those are the parcels when we talked about city-owned pieces that may be surplusable or have an opportunity for sale or private use in the future. That represents one of those areas. So we wanted to leave that alone, not rezone at civic zone right now. The city could elect to sell that and develop it at R1 12.5 as it currently is, or sell it with some other development agreement to redevelop under any other zone that we'd want to do. But if you had a question on why we left that piece to the south that was city owned, the reason being it's not under the same restrictions and limitations of no development the way the property to the north was when the city obtained it. With that, I'll happily answer any questions. The Planning Commission unanimously voted to rezone these parcels to civic zone.
Just a quick comment. You said for the civic development, I'm not sure we've been very successful in development, so just want to point that out. I'm not sure that's something that's on the council's mind. Just one additional color on that. The civic zone, as Scott said, was created so that the city had to comply with certain things, and they just couldn't go out and do whatever they needed to do. There are certain requirements in the civic zone. I know this was brought up by one of the Planning Commission members that kind of generated this idea. Is apparently Public Works building was half built before it was ever presented to the Planning Commission, according to the Planning Commission. And you recall that conversation, Scott?
Yep.
And so they just want to make sure that the city is following rules as expected of the citizens, and there are requirements there. So putting them in civic zone is actually making it more conservative for the city. Because some, I think, citizens have thought this is a way to make it a free for all for the city, and it actually puts restrictions on that. So are there any questions
Council Member Ekstrom, please.
I just had a quick one, just looking at the Lemon View Park property. Is the rest of it that's not being zoned in where it's kind of that little jog over, is that a privately held piece of ground? Is that?
So. So there's, I'd have to look at the aerial map to count the houses, but there's a home right here next to the access roads. This is the access road. It goes back. This is the parking lot. This is all grassy fields with the ball diamond right here. Pickleball courts will be located just off of the parking lot. So you've got at least 1, 2, 3, 4 homes that are R1 8 AG, and they do own the back half of this. And we have this piece of unincorporated Weaver County there, still next to the park.
Is that just one of our many county islands
Many.
that's just stuck in there?
Yep, exactly.
Any talk of annexing that in so we could put it in the park?
I mean, the city could reach out and grab it if we wanted to, but it's one of those that will stay in a non-annexed island until they choose to develop. And if Weaver County doesn't give them the development they want, which is, likely if they want anything higher than an agricultural zone, then they'll annex and develop. Future land use map would have this area likely rezoned to residential R110, just like everything else around it.
Okay, so that's a private resident. Is that just one home, maybe like property owner in there
Yes.
that
Yep.
owns it? Okay. That's just gee whiz for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? Councilmember Dalpas.
On Lowman View Park on the north end, that little carve out, isn't that the stormwater area? So would it make sense to extend the civic zone on that or not? I'm just curious since it's also, I believe, city owned.
And then there's actually some homes. There's 4 homes. So it goes, thank you, John. 1, 2, 3, 4 homes, and then this is that area.
Oh, okay.
The
All
storm
right.
detention, this is that unincorporated parcel.
Okay, then my comment is not important.
But if we own those, then yeah, potentially. We wouldn't be able to at this time because we held a public hearing per state code for land use and rezones that only included this parcel ID. So that was an error on my part. We could come back and do that. Detention basins are typically, they're just zoned, whatever the underlying residential zone is. We'd have to go back and, we've got, I have no idea, 50 or 70 or something. We've got a ton of detention basins in the city. You'd have to go back and individually do them. That probably doesn't really benefit us because they aren't structures the way these, the civic zone, to the mayor's point, it points back in the code to, we have to follow our commercial parking standards, and we have to follow our landscaping standards, and we have to follow our setbacks and all of those other items. So it just gives us the same sandbox to play in that anybody else would. If somebody were to privately be developing a police station and we reviewed that as a site plan, it would end up very similar to what we did because we had to follow our own rules. But thank you, Councilmember, for pointing that out.
Any other questions? Mr. Hess. All right, if there are none, then I would look for a motion to rezone identified properties to the civic zone. Do we have a motion?
I motion that we rezone these 2 properties that were discussed into the civic zone. The one property being the Lowman View Park and the other being the trailhead at 2750 and Mountain Road.
Thank you, Councilmember Dalpas. We would like to second his motion.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. Are there any further discussions or questions? Seeing none, John, if you would make sure Councilmember Severin is unmuted. As we take this vote, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't see any opposed. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 8. That will be John Kohler, City Manager and Attorney. He'd like to discuss with us an amendment to the development agreement for costs related to installation of storm drain improvements in the Northwood Hills subdivision. John?
Thank you, Mayor. So, me and Bryce are gonna work on getting a speaker microphone combo instead of having these two continue to fight with each other. Not sure why it worked one meeting and then stopped again, but Bryce will help me figure it out. Or more appropriate, Bryce will probably figure it out. So council, this is an agreement that is coming back to you based on inflationary expenses for the most part on a piece of property that is east of the Barker Park property. And specifically in this area of the city at about 1125 north or east is this intersection. But when this subdivision was put in, the city had an obligation to provide extra capacity from about this location in front of this LDS church to the west to connect to the drainage that goes through Barker Park. And because of that being a natural channel and somewhat unregulated, an idea was brought forward to maybe continue. There's currently a pipe there, about a 15-inch pipe, and this would have been an upsize to a 18-inch or a 24-inch pipe. And so we made the connection from this intersection south into the Northwood Hills subdivision. In order to do that, their first underground storm drain is in this area, 3 or 4 lots into the subdivision. So the city had an agreement that we would pay for this much of the pipe. And then the developer would then cover the rest of the cost down until it got into the Oaklawn Basin. And then there was a second connection where there were some existing stormwater issues in this area, just off of 1225 East. Those also were planned to be captured and then piped down, and the city paid for a couple 100 feet of pipe in that area as well. Long story short, or long story longer, depending on how you want to look at it, the cost for the work went up from $67,000 to about $82,000 or $3,000. And the developer came and asked and said, "Hey, will you be willing to cover this?" The response back, Eric and I went through it, Eric more thoroughly than I did, was that as we went through the improvements, the ones that we felt like were justified as inflationary costs amounted to about $10,345. And the other like $35,000 to $4,000 that was being requested was actually more of it should have been on the developer. And so we suggested to them that this was a number that staff would bring back to the council as the request that we would support, as opposed to the full roughly $1,000 that they had originally requested. Technically, the way this agreement is written, the council and the city are under no obligation to say it. In fact, I think up above, as you remember, it says it's a fixed price. We put some strong language in there to protect the city. So the question is just, the developers come in and said, "Hey, the whole world inflated, and we're just asking if the council would, or if the city would approach it with us in a way that," I don't want to say fairly, because I don't want it to sound like it's unfair, but they said it doesn't hurt to ask, and we'd appreciate the city participating if they would. So this is the number that staff has said that we would be comfortable as the maximum supporting.
So John, just a question. We protected ourselves in the original agreement against basically inflation. I believe that the developer captured a great deal of their costs in the increase in those lot prices that were down there, whereas the city has no way to recover this. So I agree there was inflation, but I think they were able to recapture most of the inflation as they built homes and sold those lots at fairly decent prices over the original asking prices. I just want to point that out.
I think you're right, Mayor. One of the lots in particular was one of these on the southern end down here. I don't remember, but I believe it actually went out like open bid auction, and it was just highest price bought it. And I don't remember what it sold for, but it was more than what some of the other lots were being listed for.
There were several in there, but they're very pricey lots ultimately. So anyway, council, do you have any questions for Mr. Call or any discussion you'd like to have on the issue? I'm assuming, John, this would come out of stormwater fund?
Correct.
Councilmember Dalpas?
I don't blame them for asking, but I don't believe we should pay it.
Anyone else have a comment?
Mayor,
Councilmember Ekstrom?
I'm with Councilmember Dalpas. It's like, it never hurts to ask, and I think visionaries generally try to work with us in kind of this give and take negotiation back and forth. So I'm not surprised by this. But I agree. I think they were beneficiaries of the inflation as much as they were victims. So it's like, thanks for asking. Yep. So that's my position.
Okay, John, you're pointing at something.
Blake has a comment for the group.
Okay.
Mayor, both Councilwoman Dalpas and Councilwoman Charlotte both have expressed the same feelings that I have.
See if Councilmember Swanson has anything he'd like to add, or
I'm grateful for the developer and partnering with the city and helping find some creative solutions to directing stormwater to places that we would prefer to go. And grateful that we live in a system where they can sell lots and make money.
wait. All right. Well, we have on the agenda tonight a item to make a motion to amend agreement A07-2023, or I should say, I guess it's amending the agreement of A02-2020, which would now become agreement A07-2023. We have a motion to increase the city's cost of the development by some $10,000. I am seeing no motion, so I guess that item would die for lack of a motion. Mr. Call?
So one thing, council, we've talked about in the past is that there is the chance that the council could do an alternative motion that would say that they not amend the agreement. And that would mean that the only way it could come back again as a request would be for one of the people on the supporting side to request it to come back in the future, if that makes sense.
Just getting ready to do that.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Swanson, Councilmember Swanson.
Mayor, I would make a motion that we deny the request for the additional participation in the storm sewer.
Thank you. Councilmember Swanson, do you have a second?
I will second that.
We have a second to that motion. Councilmember Ekstrom, any further discussion? I guess, John, we'll take a roll call vote on this, so we'll know. Councilmember Swanson,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalpas.
Yes.
Councilmember
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously to deny the request to amend the agreement. Moving on to item number 9 now. This will also be presented by Mr. John Call. This will be a discussion or action on whether or not to rescind a critical water emergency declaration. It was made sometime last year, I believe, John.
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor. So with the drought, council will remember that the mayor did an emergency declaration that suspended some of our code for the installation of landscaping, allowed for some folks to use culinary water on bushes, vegetables, things like that. And so in order to unwind that, because it was later ratified by the council, we just want a vote to rescind that and basically set the clock back to the way it normally is. With the one caveat, we would like some clarification and direction from the council on how much time do you want to give those folks who have built houses in that time frame to install their landscaping? So normally it's 1 year from the date of occupancy for the front yard and 18 months for the rear yard. But obviously no one's had access to sprinklers until, a couple of weeks ago. And so we'd really like that direction. So code enforcement knows what to tell people who need to install landscaping as well as their neighbors.
So the question is, do we give them another year, which would give them basically 2+ years after building a home, put in their at least front yard? Or do we say, okay, it's got to be in the next 6 months? Obviously, enforcement is easier if we give them 1 year because we don't know. Go down there, but anyway, that's the discussion. Do you have any questions of Mr. Call? Councilmember Delpas?
I would lean towards giving an additional year, and the reason I say that is I don't think anyone would have expected to be out of the drought before this winter. So there's a lot of people that would have said, oh, I have quite a bit of more time to get this done. And so, and I think we have struggles with keeping up with code enforcement as it is. So I think we just need to probably say a year, and then everyone that builds a house from now on, they know that it needs to be put in at that set timeline, but that's what I think.
John, I have a question. Did the declaration suspend putting in yards or just delay it?
I believe it's suspended, but I believe we included the declaration. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's next agenda item. Let's see. So I don't think this one,
I don't think it suspended the time to put in the yard.
no, I'm not seeing it up there. So it was just this one was just allowing them to use culinary water.
I vividly remember that we allowed more time, but maybe there was another version of this or something.
There was a declaration we did in 2021. Yeah, so I wonder if it was in that one and not in this one.
Find that one.
Let's see. Yeah.
It's
But
almost like we discussed it, but maybe it wasn't. Because I remember the discussion.
Well, and that could be true that it might have been part of the motion that was made when the council ratified this, as opposed to it actually being in the declaration. But we will do some research into that, and if we need to bring that back to council, we'll bring that portion back to council.
Okay. Of course, you know, Councilmember Delpas, that excludes council members. They still have to put their yard in.
I'm gonna be breaking my back this summer, don't worry.
When you get done, you come over to my place. All right, so what do you want to do, John? You want to rescind these other things here, or you want to wait and bring this back once we investigate the timeline for putting in the yard?
So I think it'd make the most sense to rescind this, because we know we need to do that, and I'm not sure on the other one. I'll have to go back to the minutes and see if we actually did an amendment or how we tweaked that. Go ahead.
I recall the discussion like Councilmember Delpas was saying, but you had a recollection, John, you got all excited.
I had a recollection. So in our code, I believe what we did is we amended the North Ogden City Code to say when the mayor makes a declaration, then it will suspend things. So let me.
So John?
Yeah.
That, if if that's actually written into the code and then we suspend this, because that might have just been a clever way that you put that in. So only if this declaration is in place is that requirement suspended. In which case then when we rescind this, then it just goes back to what it regularly is. And then we don't have to worry about it at all.
Yeah. That's so in theory, I think that's the way we wrote it. So when it's rescinded, that the code would not have the exception applied because there wasn't an emergency water declaration.
Yeah, so my question is, for all those that did get the occupancy permits during this declaration, do we then notify them that that declaration has been rescinded and now they are, I mean, I would go, I'm in agreement that they get the year and 18 months for the front and backyard, but they need to be informed that this is now in place and they need to get on it.
And it would probably be 200 letters. I'm looking at Scott and Bryce to kind of, that we could probably send out to folks and say, hey, just so you know, we do have an expectation that within, 12 months, your front yards are landscaped and rear yards in 18.
Yeah.
And so it would, and so from that perspective, it'd be a little bit of money out front, but probably cheaper than sending people door to door.
Okay.
Unless Bryce really wants to go door to door.
Okay, is everyone as clear as mud on that as I am? But, John is suggesting that we rescind critical water emergency declaration.
Mayor, I move that we rescind the critical water emergency declaration.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions on that? All right, John, you want to take Councilmember Severino off all those? In the declaration, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. John, you get back to the council and clarify the time to put in yards, right?
Yes, and this is the code section, this 5-71, it says, when the mayor declares an emergency, critical water emergency, it extends it by 12 months. So now that
John,
it's-
just a question, do we need to do a roll call vote to rescind that?
no,
Okay, I didn't think so, just want to check. All right, we'll move on to item number 10, which is, now that we rescinded one, put another one in place. This is a discussion or action to consider a declaration for a state of emergency, invoking emergency powers for North Ogden City. This is regarding potential flooding. We already have a fairly major issue that the city's going to have to repair. But Mr. Call, would you like to explain to the council what this means and what benefits there are? And help them understand what the declaration entails.
Sure, Mayor. So council, this declaration, I'm going to zoom out a little bit on this map, but so that the state has declared an official emergency based on the flooding. A lot of that is based on what Salt Lake County has experienced. To put it into perspective, the state needs about $5.7 million worth of damage to call on FEMA to start getting access to FEMA resources to repair stuff and things. And with that, they also have geographic areas where they want counties to have a certain threshold. Weber County has also declared an emergency. They ended up with 1.2 to 1.7 million dollars. I'm trying to remember what their threshold is, but I believe it's 1.2. So they've met that threshold partly because of the damage that was experienced on our roadway at Fruitland and 1700 North, as well as a little bit on the east side of Mountain Road. And so we felt like it was appropriate from a staff level to have the mayor do a declaration on behalf of our city, because we need to do a declaration in order to have access to the same FEMA funds. And so it's kind of everyone up the food chain has to do a declaration. Although if we hit the $5.7 million of damages, we could declare and FEMA would help us. But that's not going to happen. We don't want that to happen, obviously. But we don't have we have an estimate on what the damages are of close to $200,000. We are trying to get some quotes. And it seems like a lot of money based on what was ruined, but there's quite a bit of undercutting on the west. I am on the wrong roadway. I am a couple blocks up. There's quite a bit of undermining on the west side of Fruitland. And then this corner was significantly damaged. And the hard part about roadways is when you get that road base wet underneath the asphalt, it's pretty much a tear out and replace. It's hard to get that compaction back that you need for the road stability. The pipe, there's some storm drain pipe in this area that will probably just need to be slightly readjusted. It hasn't come completely dislodged. So we're hoping that it can, if it's reusable, it just probably needs to be reset slightly. And so all of that, the estimate is north of 200,000. That doesn't mean it won't come back cheaper, but right now that's just kind of our finger to the wind. And we've also experienced some flood damage north up by the trailhead on 2750. If you've been up there for the green or for the cleanup, this west or east side of Mountain Road is undermined significantly. Part of it is intentional, and I'm not sorry, but we have not repaired a portion of it because in the situation where the North Ogden Canyon was to start to overflow, we have the option of using the channel that's partially been come in and punching it down into the green waste pit and using the green waste pit as some emergency flood mitigation to help with houses downhill. Because if we flood out the leaves and branches, they'll dry out eventually, or at least much quicker than basements will. And then up here on the Canyon Road, where we go to access some of our springs and things, a significant portion of that road has been eroded. It's all road base. It's not super expensive, but there are some culverts that we've pulled out because they've been damaged and we're clogging and getting in the way. Those are the main areas we know of there's damage. But so this is kind of a formality to give us access to that FEMA money that all of our residents' taxpayer dollars have been funding for years, and it's been going to other locations, California, Louisiana, all those places that you see on the news that are disasters. That's the purpose of the FEMA money. We get about 75% of the cost covered. The city is required to pay about 25%. But we can count volunteer hours and things towards that 25% of the total cost of everything, which is why we've been tracking volunteers and all of your time and others that have been involved in the flood mitigation that we've been doing this year. And that's what I've got.
John, I believe there's been some commitment, correct me if I'm wrong, to replace some of those culverts on 1700 to help the water flow better in the future. I believe you mentioned that.
Yes, that is my recommendation, is that now that we know some of those culverts are severely undersized, that we should look at ways to get those swapped out. And I would actually recommend the city do it at our cost with the stormwater dollars, not necessarily pipe the whole thing right now, unless the council wanted to make that expense. But if we could take those 15-inch culverts and move them out to the 24 or 30 inches that they need to be, then that would eliminate much of the issues that happened this year. And stormwater is one of those weird things where it's the city's or it's government's responsibility to help mitigate stormwater, but it's also weird because we don't actually have liability for stormwater. So it's this weird like dance. And so that's why I feel like my recommendation would be that we put the culverts in now that we know they failed. And because it's not the irrigation water that the ditch was designed for that's failed, that's causing the failure. It's the snow melt. Yeah. So it's just this weird area.
We have other similar situations where we'll probably have to increase pipe size in various locations in the city. But let me add a number 5 then to the potential tentative budget.
I think we're number 7.
Because we don't know what this is going to cost or what's going to happen. So
Yeah, that's true. We don't know what the FEMA costs are going to come up with, but that's something that will need to be added to the budget at some point.
okay.
Any questions? Do you have the declaration, John, there that you could pull up? The council may want to see what I signed.
I'm just trying to make sure I pull up the right one. Oh, that's not the right one. It'll be this flood one. Yep.
Just want to give a oversight of that to the council. Want to give a little insight on what the.
Oh, insight. Sorry, I thought you said oversight. Yeah. So this is,
What they're agreeing to here.
okay, so this is based on a template we got from the county. So this is very similar, but basically it says, it identifies there's a state of emergency, what the cause of the emergency is with the flooding. And then it then authorizes the city to use the emergency powers that are found in state code to basically, it opens things up like emergency expenditures. So it authorizes the mayor and Jamie and myself to spend money up to a certain point without council approval. So usually that's capped at 50. But this would authorize us, let's say there was like the whole hillside was coming down, we needed a bunch of equipment. We could go out and contract, get the equipment moving before we came to the council and did a meeting. It takes effect immediately, which is the date it was signed in May, and it runs for 30 days. If flooding is going to extend beyond that, then we will likely do a second one of these. In the years past in Utah, most areas of the state have seen any flooding they do experience that's based on snow melt subside by the beginning of June. This is a weird year. It's colder than normal. Which is good because it's making them melt slowly, but there might be a chance it extends out. And then the next two things are basically saying, hey, we're authorized to now go after the U.S. government, not go after, request the assistance from the U.S. government to come and help us. So, yeah.
John, the state, I know, had the initial allocation of $5 million. The governor's calling the legislature back into session to increase that. Do we know how to access that money aside from FEMA?
So the way that, I don't know on the additional money, how to access it. The previous round, they reached out to all the emergency managers and specifically said, what are your needs? I'll check with Casey if he knows, or I know Casey's watching and there's a chance he might be texting me. He hasn't texted yet, but he did say the Weaver County threshold is 1.5 million. But so Casey has a good relationship with Lisa, the Weber County Emergency Coordinator, and she will help navigate us through that process because the county or the state is not going to give it all to Salt Lake County, but they are focusing on the areas that are experiencing flooding. So with Weber County making a declaration, we have access to those funds depending on how much comes.
Last I heard, we have the most water sitting up on that mountain of anywhere in the state, so.
Yeah, water content wise, Ben Lomond had the highest water content of anywhere in the state. I think there's areas that got fluffier snow than Ben Lomond did, I think is why they make that distinction.
So it has to come down somewhere.
Your face.
Yeah.
All right, council, you have, Mr. Collins explained that declaration. Would you like to make a motion to accept that declaration for state of emergency? Invoking the emergency powers of North Ogden City.
Mayor, I move that we accept the declaration for a state of emergency and invoking emergency powers for North Ogden City.
Okay, we have a motion by council member Selling. Would someone like to second that?
Second.
You can't second your own motion.
No, because you said that.
It's a bad day today.
We all have some days.
Council member Extra made a motion. Would someone like to second that?
Second.
Okay, council member Smith. Councilmember Delphine. Any further discussion? We'll start with you, Councilmember Swanson.
Yes.
Councilmember Dowpaz,
Yes.
Councilmember Sever,
Yes.
Councilmember Ekstrom.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously on a 4-0 vote. We're now moving to item number 11, which is council departments reports. I don't know, Councilmember Severing's in a position to do that with all the feedback.
So he can do it. I just have to mute the microphone and then he can speak. So if you're trying to talk back to him, we need to not talk back to him.
Wow, you're going after the feds, we're talking back to the council member.
But yeah, so when you let him, I'll do the switch so he can speak and we won't get the feedback.
All right, let's start with Councilmember Severing, who'll report on anything that's going on in the police department that he'd like us to know, the citizens. We'll then move to Councilmember Ekstrom to see what she'd like to report on public works. And Councilmember Barker is still absent, so we may have to forego that report unless you have something, John.
I can provide some information, but.
All right, let's start with Councilmember Severing and no talking back.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you guys hear me? Okay, so the chief wanted me to just indicate two things. Just a reminder to all the citizens that North Ogden ordinance requires dogs to be leashed anytime they're outside of the home or a fenced enclosure. And be particularly considerate of that and have your dogs leashed, especially when you're at local parks and trails. And then second, Chief Quinny wanted to just express appreciation to all the citizens in the community for the support following the tragic shooting and house fire of nearly 2 weeks ago. We appreciate everybody's support and love and concern. And that's all I have, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing, and thank you for participating, helping organize candlelight vigil. There were citizens there and I know the police appreciated the support that was given there, so. Councilmember Ekstrom.
Okay. Report from Works Director, and he's basically saying that spring cleanup is underway at the Green Waste Pit, and it runs through Saturday. And currently, knock on wood, cross fingers, pray. All of our creeks are still flowing, but all are under control right now. So yay! So I'm continuing to pray for a slow thaw, and so far my prayers have been answered. We'll see how well it continues.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Ekstrom. John, did you have anything you wanted to add on Parks and Recreation?
So just seasonals. If anyone knows anyone who's interested in working with a great group of folks, we are hiring. Typically, we prefer 16 and up so they can drive our vehicles as well as operate most of the equipment, because there are some restrictions for 15-year-olds, and we can't use 14-year-olds for any lawn equipment. And then Cherry Days is moving right along. I know the committee met after our meeting last week. They're coordinating with staff. There's a meeting in about a week where they're going to get together with staff and talk about needs, wants, things like that, so that everyone's on the same page. And I know they've been out hounding and beating the bushes for donations, much to the chagrin of the businesses who are opening up their pocketbooks. Is that a bad thing? I guess it's nice to have folks out beating the bushes, and it's been unexpected for some of the businesses, I guess is the way to say it. So
I understand they're doing quite well too.
Yeah.
They're raising donations, so
Yeah, very good.
that's good. Anything else, Mr. Call, you'd like to add?
Not about parks, no.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to skip this public comments period, so we'll enter into item number 12 on our agenda, seeking public comments for anyone who'd like to comment this evening. Now would be the time to step up to the podium and state your name.
Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Have any? For anyone online, John?
No hands raised.
Randy Wynn, North Ogden. I would just like to say that I think one of the most wonderful things our city does is this green waste and other items week, cleanup week that we have. It's very well participated in and it goes all week long and I think it helps keep our city clean and so forth. Let's keep doing it. Thank you, Randy. Councilmember Barker, just in time to make a motion to adjourn. Almost, not quite. Anyone else? Sue, you want to step up and tell us your name and if you're a resident of North Ogden?
My name is Sue Birch and I live in North Ogden. My question is for Councilmember Barker about Ben Lomond Park. How do we get public input on where those ball courts go?
So is that Lomond View Park?
Yeah.
Yeah. They've already been, our city engineers and staff have already got it designed. And they've already started the process of putting them in. By
They have?
removing, well, they've removed sprinklers. They're starting.
Well, that's my question. Why are they taking an existing piece of grass that already has sprinklers and established trees and is level where elderly people can sit with their families and putting pickleball courts up there, and yet up on the northwest corner, up by the stream, it's been in weeds for 35 years. And a mess, and no sprinkling system, no grass, no anything. And it only got cleaned up because our ward did a service project.
I can find out, but I know they said that was the most economical place to put them.
Oh, that was my next question, because where they're putting it right now, they're right underneath people's bedroom windows. I'm right next to their houses and their yards, and the lights will be on. He said they'll be pointed down, your city engineer, but there's still lights and they're gonna be on till 10 o'clock at night and disturbing the people. When around the corner, they're behind my barn, and my cows don't care how long the lights are on. And you got plenty of room and it's right adjacent to the ball diamonds, and people could be watching their kids play, watching football. And it's just a wasted piece of ground that hasn't been used for anything. And it's sad to see it deteriorate every year.
I'll ask the questions. I'm not sure, yeah. All I know is that's where they said they were.
Yeah, I didn't notice that because I live right next door. So I didn't notice they were pulling out sprinklers, but yeah, it's a shame. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Any other public comments this evening? John, anyone online?
Nope.
All right, we'll move on to item number 13 on our agenda. Any comments from staff this evening?
John.
Mr. Call, you have something for us.
Yes, so as, just so you're aware, there have been more folks who've asked about Flip the Strip. So we are going to put it on a future agenda for council to talk about with information on what resources the city would need to provide, since Pineview is not providing resources, and Weaver Basin doesn't provide resources because we don't have the contractual relationship there either. So and then also Dylan and his team, Dylan, Crystal, Caleb, and the public works folks have been getting rid of all the escrow balances. I think I told you that last time. I think we're only got one developer who hasn't reached out and said they will finish their stuff yet. Everybody else we've met with and got a path forward, which has been really good. You also on Thursday nights, some of the friction with the senior center has gone away. The band is using this room for the first half of their practices. So that's been really good. And then one final comment is that as you get complaints from residents, one thing that would be very helpful is to ask them if they've reached out to the departments, because sometimes people have come here directly to the council to complain and people didn't know about it. A good example, Brett's a really nice guy. He just hadn't talked with code enforcement or the chief about the dogs off the leash. He just came here first, and you could see it caught the chief a little off guard. And so That's what we try and encourage folks, is give the department heads a chance to correct it before they come. We're always happy for feedback any way we can get it. We just, usually if people know where to go, it's nice to go that route first, because most of the time it catches the department heads off guard. So.
John, that brings up an issue. I think our citizens know, I still get comments of people going over to get their green waste put somewhere else or to pay their utility bill. Do they understand that they can come back on everything they need?
They should, and I say they should because the Public Works building was only open to the public about 2 years, and we've been back over here for 3 years now. So it's a little bit of training, but I think we can probably beef up how we let people know. In fact, we might just eliminate the Public Works address as a location on the website, so it's very clear that people need to come here for stuff.
And now that we've kind of changed parks here too, I think it'd be good to make sure the citizens know.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Call?
The pool opens in 3 weeks. And they are staffed. We did some training. Katie was great in helping with the training, and Justin, and they're excited. It's a fun group of workers, and it's going to be a good year.
Joyce, do you have anything for us you'd like to?
I do not.
Anything else? Right, Scott? Clark? All right, council. Do you have anything to bring to our attention this evening?
Blake
Okay.
has unmuted himself.
We'll talk about
Okay, Blake, I think you're okay to go.
Well, I did unmute myself, but I actually was just really waiting to second a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Hold on. Anything else? Councilmember Barker.
Since I didn't make it here for item 11C, can I give a quick parks update?
John gave one, but
Okay,
go ahead.
you probably said everything I did. Well, you stole the swimming pool, that's opening up. Baseball started yesterday for our youth. Just to give you a perspective, my son plays the 3rd and 4th grade, and there's 12 teams. Which is, I get to be the coach, I don't know why, but I have 12 kids, so that if you do them, that's almost 150 kids are playing baseball between 3rd and 4th grade. 5th and 6th is about 8 to 10 teams, so we have a lot of kids out playing sports. And then on top of that, our parks and the bathrooms are all open, so restrooms are open and functioning.
And if you see something, say something,
Yes.
because as you know, Pleasant View had some significant vandalism.
Thanks, Councilmember Barker. John, I had 2 questions that I said I would bring up. What is our ordinance? And I know there's a state one on this, but on panhandling, I had someone indicating it's getting pretty heavy down in the Smith's, Starbucks, Ace Hardware area.
Free speech.
The state courts and attorneys, those dirtbag attorneys, I'm one for those who don't know that, have used the First Amendment protections to, the only thing we can do is keep people out of the travel lanes. So if they are off of the travel lanes and not impeding traffic or sidewalk flow, for example, we can only pick them up for that.
That was the answer I gave. I just wanted to get that confirmed. And then someone asked, who owns the Coldwater Creek flow?
Coldwater Creek,
You know, it comes down, goes behind houses there in Coldwater.
I don't know that. I know the city, I don't believe owns any water rights in Coldwater Creek, if I remember correctly. There are some private landowners right there at the mouth of the canyon that own some. But I think it might be downstreet rights. It might all be owned by the canal, I think.
If you find out, someone asked that question, I didn't know how to answer that.
I will see what I can find, yeah.
And then we talked about sometimes, I think, following up on those water rights. Everybody says they have them, but how do we verify that? Then also in regards to access for the folks on the Fall of the Flag, having access up that trail that is now being refused. I think you said that's something that can't be shut off, to access to that trail.
So yeah, there's a rule in state code that says, basically if a trail, they call them private roads, but or public roads, if it's been used for access for more than 10 years continuously, then it becomes a dedicated to public use trail. That battle has been fought in lots of jurisdictions. So if someone wanted to lean on and prove that the state, or that there was a public access there, it would be I wouldn't say a simple lawsuit, but it'd be a lawsuit relying on historical records. What most people do is use pioneer journals to talk about, hey, me and my family went picnicking up Coldwater Canyon, or we went up horse riding or shooting or hunting. And so that's the most likely scenario if someone was to officially challenge that. There have been government entities that have done that. Cache County did that fairly recently, and Box Elder, both of those have had two pretty good battles with ranchers over canyon access roads. So that would be the path forward. If someone wanted to get it firmly established, it would probably be through court if there wasn't a way to reach an agreement with the landowners.
Yeah, it seemed like the best way is to try to reach an agreement. Avoid litigation, but I don't know how we go about that. So, all right, those are the two items I had. If there's nothing else, then I would look for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilmember Ashland.